views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Concern was raised when flyers were found on 3 trees in Woodlawn inciting a white supremacy call to action. We'll talk about that with tonight's guest. We'll also talk about the midterm elections just passed and what a Democratic majority will mean for the state Senate, and in some in-depth discussion of Bronx politics, some local issues to the 81st Assembly District, and that's what's on our table for tonight's guest. Please join me in welcoming back to Bronx Talk the Assemblyman from the 81st District in the Bronx, Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Nice to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
I did a count, and I told you before the show, I was going to tell you during the show how many times you've been on the program. We debuted in 1994.
And so did I.
And that's right. And you have been on the program. This is your 25th appearance on the program.
Wow.
A little applause from everybody in the room. One person. Congratulations, and thank you for being on the program all these times. Well, something that I don't think we ever had to talk about in the Bronx together or separately were these flyers that were found. I understand there were 3. I've heard conflicting reports. Extolling white excellence. I think we have a picture of them. It says, American and European men unite, defend your heritage, defend your history. White men built modern civilization. Stop the invasion of black thugs into our neighborhood, targeting old women and young men leaving bars, which is some rather strange point of view. Stand against the spread of radical Islam, bringing Sharia law to enslave and rape our women and children. And then it invited people to come on Wednesday nights into bars in Woodlawn to somehow congregate or create a movement of some sort. I think horrible for any right-thinking person as an assembly member of that district. What do you think?
Well, first, on so many different levels, this is really bad. From his bad spelling to the juvenile, some of the things that they've said. What is this? I mean, old women and young men. I don't know what that was all about. But whether this person was like a really serious person or just some jerk or a combination of both.
It sounds like a little of both.
The fact is, no matter who's behind it, and the police, I think, will find the person any time now. It doesn't really matter what their motivation is, because anything like that is filled with hate, and it has to be denounced in no uncertain terms. Woodlawn is a beautiful community, and to put this up there or any place is unacceptable. And, you know, there were so many incidents, whether it's something like this or things that are violent, in the past year and past, I would say since January 20th, 2017 in particular. But when you hear anything that's like this, whether it's racist or anti-Semitic or Islamophobic, homophobic, anything, we all have to stand strong against it. And as elected officials, we have to denounce it.
I chatted with a number of people in Woodlawn about it, and there was a feeling you don't want to overreact because it was one incident, and we know certainly this could be the one person who does the worst thing you could imagine, which would be just second or just above this particular outrage. But that maybe you don't want to go crazy because it starts to characterize a neighborhood or people think that it's coming out of this neighborhood. And so let the police deal with it and don't overreact, I guess would be the word.
Well, you're right. We shouldn't overreact. However, denouncing it is not an overreaction. You know, we've had incidents in Riverdale in recent years where, I think it was last year maybe, some kids painted swastikas on some doors in Fieldston. Now, swastikas are unacceptable anywhere. Of course we denounce it. Of course we ask for an investigation. We don't ignore it, though. and the police found out after their investigation that they were kids. Does that excuse it? No. Do these kids know what the swastikas meant? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the fact is, whenever there's some instance like this, we have to speak out. It could turn out that this person is some jerk, some
An
teenager.
outlier of some
An
sort.
outlier. I mean, this certainly doesn't characterize the neighborhood of Woodlawn. Anybody I've spoken to in Woodlawn since then, I've spoken to several people, they're all furious, they're outraged, and I think the community is unanimous in being opposed to this, but I think it is important for people to speak up and say, not in this neighborhood, not in any neighborhood.
Assemblyman, let's talk about the midterms just passed. There are many different levels to look at it. Let's talk about it from your legislative body. Congratulations to you for being reelected.
Oh, thank you.
Overwhelmingly, although it doesn't seem like there was much of a campaign in the other direction. The state Senate has changed or will be changing. What opportunities does that mean, or does that mean for Democrats in the Assembly and some of the issues that have been important to you?
First of all, it's great. It's very exciting.
I knew you would say that.
I've been in the Assembly for a very long time now, but for a short period of time, the Republicans ran the Senate. And in the past several years, we did get a lot of good things done. You know, we did the minimum wage, marriage equality, paid family leave, universal pre-K, just to name a few. A lot of things have gotten done, but there are important things that have not gotten done that we have a better chance of getting done now. For example, the codification of Roe v. Wade, election law reform, closing the LLC loophole, passing stronger tenant legislation, climate change legislation, the DREAM Act. And I'm hopeful that this coming year, we can pass that and a whole lot more because we have a strong majority now of Democrats.
Democrats in the Assembly, Democrats in the Senate, and of course a Democratic governor. Is there a risk? I mean, a political risk? I mean, you've just listed a whole bunch of things that many people in the Bronx will say, wow, that would be fantastic. Then all of a sudden, guess what? Now you can't blame anybody else if something doesn't get done.
Well, it's up to us to get it done. I'm not looking to blame people for not getting things done. We should put our energy into getting this stuff done. Mm-hmm. And I believe we have the ability to do that. You know, the Senate has 63 members. Until this week, the breakdown was 32 Republicans, including Felder, and 31 Democrats. It was really 31 plus a rogue Democrat who conferenced with the Republicans, 32-31. 8 new Democrats got elected. So add 8 to 31, you now have 39 Democrats compared to, I guess that's 24 Republicans. 39 plus 24 is 63.
What's first on that list? I mean, one thing you did not mention, and it was certainly important to the new state senator in your area, Alessandra Biaggi, is health care. Does that become the first thing? I mean, you go into the Assembly, of course, the Assembly has passed its own single-payer plan, but do you go in there and say, good, Lon, let's put that back out there, let's move that forward?
Well, there were a number of things I didn't mention. It was just a partial list, and I said, and other stuff, and that's an important part of other stuff. I can't tell you what order the Senate will take things up. I mean, I think there are certain low-hanging fruit that they should have no problem doing, like codification of Roe v. Wade.
You think that could definitely be done?
With 39 Democrats, absolutely. I think the health care single payer is still a tough challenge. We have passed it in the Assembly. The devil's in the details. The governor has been, I'm not clear on where he stands, but I think that's going to take a lot of work. This is multi-10 billions of dollars of impact on the economy. So that's something which I don't think is happening in January, but it's something we really need to focus on, I think.
Gun control?
Gun control. Again, the
Assemblyman who's been touting these issues for a long time is salivating somewhat. You're pretty happy about it.
Gun control. We have the opportunity to pass, and we already have the strongest gun control laws in the country, but to make it much, much stronger, to expand to a laundry list of gun legislation that we've worked on for years.
Alessandra Biaggi ran against somebody whom you supported, who has been a personal friend and a colleague for many years, Jeffrey Klein, and she won. There was that photograph that came out of you, Assemblymember Cohen, and Ms. Biaggi standing together. You were campaigning for her. What's that relationship now? Is she now kind of part of the group, and all things being equal, we now move forward. How do you view the new state senator in the 34th?
Well, I've had an opportunity to speak with her at length. I think she's delightful. She won the primary fair and square, and it wasn't a razor-thin victory. She's going to be the state senator. I look forward to working with her. We campaigned together prior to Election Day. In our area, in my district, we work as a team. So that team includes Congressman Elliot Engel for most of my district, but also Congressman Adriano Espaillat for a chunk. It includes Councilman Cohen. It includes Alessandra Biaggi and our other state senators. We work together, and our ability to work together as a team is one reason why we can deliver for our community. So I look forward to working with her.
Straight and simple, many people have asked me, I'm sure they ask you about Jeff Klein. Nobody seems to have heard from him. We tried at BronxNet to reach out when we were going to be doing some work ahead of the election. He still was on the ballot. Have you heard from him? Does anybody know where he is or what his thoughts are right now? He certainly still is in office until January 1. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I haven't spoken to him recently. I'm sure he's thinking about what he's going to do starting in January, but I can't speak for him, obviously. But he was in office for many, many years, and I'm sure he's giving a lot of thought to what he's going to do.
Among the things people were concerned about with any new senator, particularly with Jeff Klein leaving, is the kind of constituent services and funding he provided for many community groups. Is that a concern for you? Presumably you'll help her if she asks, but what about all the groups he supported? Can she continue that sort of thing?
Well, he was in a unique position, given that whole circumstance in the Senate, to bring in an enormous amount of funding. I don't think anybody would be able to do that much, but she will be in the majority in the Senate as opposed to being a minority senator, as was our other senators in the Bronx. So I think I'm a little more optimistic than some people are about her ability to do that. But clearly the voters did not vote on that basis. I can't read people's minds, but I've spoken to a lot of people, and I think the election turned out to be a referendum on Trump and her campaign.
And the IDC, is that what you're not saying?
Well, Trump and the IDC. Okay. Her slogan was that she's a true blue Democrat, and I think people voted on that basis, and
on we go.
And the voters have spoken. But I should tell you that we are going to be doing, I'm organizing some town hall meetings in December, in the end of November and December. She will be part of, she'll be the senator-elect.
Good chance to meet her and talk to
we want to give the community an opportunity to see the team that's representing them. So one of them will be myself, Senator-elect Biaggi, Councilman Cohen, and Congressman Engel, and the other one will be with Congressman Espaillat instead of Engel because of the district.
For various similarities, we could probably pick them out, including the similarity of their first names. Alessandria and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were kind of thrown together, although they are two very different people with very different backgrounds and even different political ideology. I interviewed both, and so I have a pretty good sense of that. What do you make of the progressive movement on a local level and even on a national level? Obviously, things are changing on the blue side. What do you make of it? Are Democrats ready to welcome this in as part of their rainbow, so to speak?
Well, things are always changing. A lot of new people have gotten involved in politics, despite the fact that we had always hoped that candidates like Clinton or Obama or Hillary Clinton and others would help bring in a lot of people to be active in the Democratic Party. That did not happen in great numbers. The person who brought in the most people to volunteer for the Democratic Party was Republican Donald Trump. He has activated people, and rightly so, given every day is another outrage. The issues that many of the so-called progressives, and I say so-called because labels. Why is this person a progressive and that person a liberal and this person a moderate? In fact, most Democrats agree on most issues.
I was going to just interject that many of the things you even talked about are many of the things we hear certainly from Ms. Ocasio-Cortez and others throughout the country on progressive issues. I don't know what you want to label.
Most of these issues are issues which I have worked for, which the Assembly has passed time after time. So most of these issues aren't new issues. So I hope that there'll be unity within the Democratic Party, because we still have battles to fight. And in 2 years, and 2 years rolls around pretty quickly, we have to replace Donald Trump.
In the borough of the Bronx, and you're well familiar with it, you are the secretary of the Bronx County Democratic Committee. There is a progressive movement, it's reflecting partially from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but also there are progressives. Is there room enough in the Democratic Party? I mean, I know I've asked Marcos Crespo the same question. Will there be rules changes? People are looking, as you know from the meeting that you presided over, people are looking for ballot access or candidate selections. Will there be changes?
Everything evolves over time, and that will continue to happen. I welcome everybody, just as I was not welcomed into the Democratic Party when I was, earlier on.
That's interesting.
I was far from welcomed. I battled with one county leader after another until the Rainbow Rebellion in 2008, when we brought new leadership to the Bronx. And I think under that leadership, first it was with Carl Hastie, who's now the Speaker of the Assembly, and now with Assemblyman Crespo, I think a lot of changes have taken place. If you look at one thing people talk about a lot is more diversity in terms of our elected officials. If you look at the civil court bench, and I cite that as one example, in the Bronx, people talk about not enough women. Well, of our 12 civil court judges, and there are 4 more seats that'll be filled next year, 2 are men and 10 are women. So no one can say there aren't enough women. They could say there aren't enough men, but the point is that's one small example of the efforts that have been made in recent years to diversify the bench, to bring in everybody possible into the party and into positions of responsibility.
There are Bronx progressives who would say to you, you know what, we still want we don't get our candidates to get the proper hearings or things like that. What are your thoughts?
I think every candidate gets a hearing. Ultimately, it's up to the voters. You have to distinguish between...
Well, not if the county organization always supports incumbents, for example.
Well, as an incumbent, I'm not... I don't hate that. But the truth is, like in our district, we support ourselves. I don't think 100% of the time an incumbent should be supported. I think the default position should be to support somebody in office who's done a good job. If somebody is horrible, no, that person should not be supported. But you can't say that things are bad because you don't like the results of an election. The voters vote, the people speak, and that's the result. That doesn't mean something was done unfairly, although we've seen example after example where things are done unfairly. Look at the fact that the presiding election officer in Georgia was the candidate for governor who determined the rules, and now we have a razor-thin margin. Mm-hmm. But as a general rule, elections run smoothly in the Bronx. There's been no
I guess
claims of fraud.
The issue is prior to the election, people want to get access, or maybe there are elected officials who have been kind of continually supported despite some people perceive as a lack of real performance.
Well, and anybody could run. The ballot access rules, which can always be improved, are much more liberal than they were many years ago. Mm-hmm. You need fewer signatures. Minor mistakes won't knock out signatures. Things have really changed a lot. If you're running, say, for the Assembly, you need 500 signatures of Democrats to get on the ballot in the Democratic primary. Now, if over the course of a 5-week plus period of time, you can't get 500 signatures, maybe you don't have any real support out there.
Assemblyman, let's talk about some local issues prior to the program. We were talking about this building on Palisade Avenue. Why don't you give us a little background as to what it is? I know you have some not totally pointed feelings, but you have some concerns about what's going on up there.
The building on Palisade Avenue we're talking about is at a 2395 Palisade, a building which I'm familiar with. I've been in it. It's a 7-unit building. It was built, I guess, around 90-plus years ago. It's similar to a more well-known building called the Villa Charlotte Bronte, also on Palisade Avenue, which had beautiful architecture, just beautiful everything. It was from an era that we don't see buildings like that built now. Now the buildings are very sterile looking. So several weeks ago, it was brought to my attention by some constituents that they boarded up the outside. Work was being done. People were concerned. I went over there. I saw that the Department of Building Permits said they're doing interior renovation. They intended to, whoever the developers were, to convert 7 units into 11 units.
Is there a landmark status or a historic district status that is a factor? No.
There is not. It's not in the Special Natural
Just
Area
wanted to be
District.
clear about that.
It would have been good if it was landmarked, but that ship has sailed, basically.
Right.
So when we went over there, I'm looking at it, I'm saying interior work. Half the roof was missing. They were taking out the roof. So it was clear to me what was going on. The intention, in my opinion, was to knock down the building and build a big building.
So aside from the particulars of what they were building, it sounds like you and others were concerned that you didn't have all the information of what was really going on. That can be a dangerous thing.
Well, and there are numerous issues. So I reached out to the developer. I spoke to their lobbyist, and she told me that, I said, well, what are you doing there? And the most she would say was, they intend to develop the site. So to me, that means they're knocking down the building and they're going to build to the max. Councilman Cohn and I and the Rosemary Ginty, chair of the community board, met with the developers, and they said that they could build up to 55 units. Mind you, there were 7 units there now. 55 units. They would, if they did that, they'd provide 50% parking. That's all they're required to do. Now, Palisade Avenue, number 1, has no street parking to speak of. Number 2,
barely driving space as well.
Number 2, at that location, I mean, it's true, it's right next to the railroad station, the Spinovel station, but given its location, far away from shopping areas, from the Broadway number 1 train.
People are going to need a way to move around.
Everybody's going to have a car. Nobody moving in there is not going to have a car.
So what's the play out here? It's going up. There's nothing that you can do, or you're still working with people, or how does it work?
There's a number of issues. There are questions of whether they did asbestos abatement, and if they did so safely. There are major issues with that. There's also a question of how this might impact the MTA work that's being done nearby. So there are issues, but ultimately, it's an as of right. It's as of right. They could build.
Is it one looking back that you say, gee, this one kind of got started before we really realized it, or got approved before the community board or others knew about it?
Well, the community board doesn't actually have to approve it. The community board was not asleep at the switch. They went ahead and did this. They applied for a permit. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that when they applied for the permit to convert 7 into 11, that their real intention was to build 55 units, because you're going to spend a few $1 million on a piece of property and not know what you're going to do with it?
There's a very interesting story about the Hudson River Greenway, or the prospects for Hudson River Greenway in the Riverdale Press this week. And it basically says that, well, the feasibility study has been done. It's, this can be done, but there's a simple $100 million tab involved. And I've had dialogues with people on all sides of this who say, you know what, you're never going to raise that money. What are your thoughts? Is that the kind of money you would go and fight for, whether it be public funding? What's your thought?
I believe that this should happen. I believe that it's going to be very difficult given the price tag. But I also believe that if it were in Manhattan, it would happen. And why do I say that? Remember the High Line?
I was going to say, you must be referring to the High Line.
The High Line, I mean, huge amounts of private money and government money was put in for that. Now, it's true, more people would be using the High Line than this. But the point being that this is something which should happen, and it's a long-term prospect, is what I think.
Is the bottom line for it. Also, Broadway, the traffic's been remodeled, and there's been room now for bike lanes. It's a very busy place, especially in the fall with the cross-country and everything else.
Right.
You supported the project. What do you think? How's it going? I saw a Facebook thing, and people were just, we don't like this thing. It's in the way. What are your thoughts?
I supported the project with some reservations. My main reservation was that I thought they should have separated out the bottom of the plan, which is under the L where those stores are at 242nd and Manhattan College Parkway, because I thought that was a separate issue which should have been dealt with separately. I was always concerned about buses stopping in the lane of traffic. I think we should give it a chance. It's been approved. It's been implemented.
What would let you know that it's working or not working? Like
Well,
when you say give it a chance, what are you going to look for?
I think we should see after a reasonable period of time if accidents have decreased. The one major thing I said at the time when I said that we should give this thing a shot is that there have been many deaths. Forget about accidents and injuries, deaths. A lot of people have died on Broadway getting hit by cars. If we can do anything to slow down traffic and make it safer, we ought to do it. Now, according to the 5-0 precinct, so far, in terms of, well, there have been no deaths, but in terms of accidents, I think it's down marginally. So there's been, but I think we have to look at it after, say, a year and see. You know, if it's bad for some reason, it should be revisited.
I probably should have asked you this during our little section about politics. Your son is going to be running. I mean, there's no secret. It's out there. You've been bringing him around. He's been getting greater visibility. Just want to talk a little bit about what his objectives are and what have you told him about what he might
Well,
be trying
first of
to
all,
do?
I can't speak for him.
One day we'll get him if we get up to that
he
point.
could speak for himself. He's been very.
We're talking about Eric Dinowitz, folks.
Right. He's been very involved for a number of years in different aspects of the community. You know, he's on the community board. He sits on the aging committee. He's been involved with environmental issues. I mean, the list goes on. He's a Democratic district leader. He's been very active in organizing the district politically. He's the one who has led the way in organizing phone banks out of the Ben Franklin Club for us to help candidates from around the country.
He's been politically active in that way.
He's been politically active and community active. Obviously, I'm not an unbiased source here.
I think there's no question about that.
I think he's much better than me, though.
Well, that, of course, would remain to be seen, and voters will have that say.
Right.
Just a little thought about, because maybe we're making a presumption, you know, is he going to have to wait till 2021, or do you think there'll be some movement? Andy Cohen, who knows, right? I'm asking somebody who's not going to answer that question.
No, I'll answer it the best I can. One never knows. Some people thought there might be movement this year. It didn't turn out that way. I mean, Andy Cohen loves being a member of the city council. He does a terrific job.
All right, I knew we weren't getting anywhere with that. Assemblyman Dinowitz, we hope to have you back for visit number 26.
Okay.
One day.
Look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on the show tonight or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org. You can send a tweet at BronxTalk, or you post them on our Facebook page, and then we read them on the air during future editions of our program. Check out the archives at BronxNet.org. You find Bronx Talk by following the watch menu on the new BronxNet website. This will interest the Assemblyman. Next week, we talk land use and issues relating to the South Bronx. Councilmember Rafael Salamanca Jr. will be our guest. We thank our producer, is Helen Greenberg. Director is William Guzman. We've had some substitute people today. We thank them, our regular people, and you, and good night, and see you next week.